Hello everyone, and thank you for joining us for Midori Farm Talk number 6. In this talk, we are going to be talking about zero waste. I'm an organic farmer. I live in Kyoto City. I run Midori Farm. You can find out more about me at midorifarm.net. I've been an organic farmer for over 10 years now, and through organic farming, I have completely changed my lifestyle and improved my health. I think I have improved my position in the community because I feel I am doing something positive for the environment and for the community. So it's something I'm very excited about, and I've started these podcasts to talk to people who are also doing interesting things that I'm interested in and I think might be somewhat relatable to organic farming. I've met one of these ladies who is joining us today through my efforts at sustainability. I also co-founded Seeds of Sustainability Kyoto about 4 years ago. Through that process, I've been able to meet a lot more people and build a real community with people who are just as interested in doing something about the planet. I think it is becoming increasingly clear to all of us that there are too many of us using too much stuff, and we can really do something about that. And that is where I think zero waste comes into the picture. Now, I don't consider myself a zero waster, and I just say that because when someone asks me, hey, what do you do? What do you like? I don't say, oh, I'm zero waste. It's not because I don't believe in it. It's not because I'm not doing things like that. It's just because I define myself as an organic farmer. But as an organic farmer, I find myself constantly in the situation of having a decision to make about should I use a chemical? Should I use a plastic? Should I be doing something that is not natural or organic? And fortunately, I can almost always choose the right path. But I feel like, zero waste. People who are living in a city, people who are working in an office, people who are commuting to work and doing things like that, this is an effort I'm really interested in because I feel there's a lot of synergy between what I do and what people who consider themselves zero waste do.
For example, today I went out to my farm and we picked peas, sugar snap peas, which are one of my favorite. And my friend who was helping me, he's far from an organic farmer. He doesn't even give up meat or anything like that. And he's definitely not a zero waster. He actually smokes cigarettes. But today I had him pick the peas. And then on the way home, I gave him the peas. And he said, oh, I guess that's zero waste. I said, you just can't get any more zero waste than that. That's what it's all about. And he could get it. He could get down with that, and he could understand what I was talking about and the value of that. And when it comes to Midori Farm, I sell vegetables, I do tours, I do events, and I also accept volunteers because I think having a personal experience with something like organic farming can really change your life. It can really show you what's possible and what's valuable and what's healthy and what's good. And for me, organic farming has really shown me the way. And that's a big term to say, but I really believe it's true because when you feel you're in the way or on the way, suddenly you feel a lot lighter, suddenly you feel a lot happier, a little less stressed, about your life. And suddenly everything just gets a little bit better. And that's what organic farming does for me. And now I'm going to turn the floor over to two wonderful ladies who are going zero waste. And I think maybe it's possible that they're doing it for some of the similar reasons why I love organic farming, just because it feels like the right thing to do. So without any further ado, I'd like to introduce Noriko Shindo and Bianca Michaels. And Noriko is going to take the stage first, and I'm going to show some slides that she's provided. And she's going to talk about herself for about 15 minutes. And then we're going to change over to Bianca, who's going to do the same. I would ask everyone to please keep your microphones muted during this time. And if you have questions, please either hold on to them till the end or chat them to me. And now I'm going to be just running the chat rooms and trying to, be the referee here, trying to get people, the questions answered and so on and so forth. But please bear with me. I'm not a professional, and I'm just going to do the best I can. So without anything else to say, I'm going to turn it over to Noriko, and just give me a moment to get that set up. I'm going to pin her, but I'm also going to share my screen. And this one. As an organic farmer, I am a terrifically awful at technology, so bear with me when I make my mistakes. Noriko, it's on to you.
Thank you, Chuck. Hello, everyone. Good evening. So my name is Noriko. I like to be called Nori, but both are okay. And I am biologically Japanese, but I grew up in the United Kingdom for the earlier years of my childhood, and so I consider myself kind of mixed in culture. Would you like to show maybe the next slide?
Sure
Chuck?
thing.
Thank you. All right.
That didn't come up. There it is.
So I'm going to show you a few slides of what's close to me in my life and my heart. The first one is I am in the middle, if you can recognize me, in the blue and white yukata. It's a Japanese outfit. And then wearing the same as me as my husband. In the same picture, I forgot who was in the middle. I don't think we know her, but to the very right or the left, in the other kind of uniform in pink, is my mother. So these are sort of the two humans that I'm very close to right now. And this is a traditional dance from Tokushima, where I was born, and I relate myself that I come from. Next, please. There's two other souls that I'm close to, that I live with too. The one on the left, or the furry one, is the dog. She is called Tayo, which is sun in Japanese. And we adopted her the golden week of 2020, when I was 6 months pregnant with this one on the right hand side. You see, curled up in a towel after a shower. And this is our living room. It's not very tiny, but I live with these two people plus the husband that you saw earlier. Next, please. So my house, a little bit about me, sort of, these are the people around me, but a little bit about me myself. A couple of years ago, I became plant-based or vegan when I met my husband, who was vegan at the time, still is vegan. And then that kind of just triggered a whole lot of passion about cooking and, basically anything and everything that goes in through your mouth. Like this picture here, which is the kombucha that I started recently. And I think kombucha is actually not the first, but I don't know what you call it, like a fermented product that I've been making at home. Next, please. Some of you already know, but I also make sourdough. And if that is not familiar for anyone, sourdough is actually a fermented product, in that the starter, or sort of what acts as the yeast to make the bread rise, that is actually a fermented product. And the dough itself of the bread is also fermented in the process of making it. And so, yeah, this is also another one of my fermentation products that I love. If you know me already, I've actually been running a free website, informational website called Vegino since 2018, where basically it's kind of like my little blog of posting recipes that I think are easy and with accessible ingredients you can get in a Japanese supermarket. Plus maybe thoughts on the side about living in Japan as a plant-based person, and now a plant-based person with a child who, by the way, she's also vegan. So yeah, that's kind of. Thank you, Bianca. Next slide, please. And this is another one of, from the sourdough. This is actually also the same balcony that I'm sitting in. So apologies if I look a bit dim. I'm trying to light everything up here. But yes, we have pizza on the balcony when it's good weather on the weekends. Thank you. These foods, by the way, are all vegan. Okay. And mostly organic. And here's just another picture to show off that how much I love cooking and baking. Like my friends would tell you that's basically me. And it's also funny because I have a personal Instagram and I have an Instagram for Vegino, but I'm probably posting more of my life on Vegino because my life is basically food. So this is just another example. And I think through the course of my sort of plant-based / veganism journey, I started just by being vegan 100%. Literally overnight, I said, you know what, I'm going to stop eating animal products, partially more due to curiosity because it sounded really weird to me at the time. But then after 2 weeks, I said, you know what, this is pretty good, and it feels really good. You know, kind of to Chuck's point earlier, it's just like it just feels good. I'm just going to keep on doing this. And after about 2-3 weeks, I said, you know what, why are there people in the world being vegan? It's kind of a bit odd. And so I started looking up, of course, also asking my husband, who is an avid vegan. So asking him and looking up things and reading up about, research and books and online articles, to just educate myself on why there's this thing called veganism, and where that comes from. And where that led me to is realization that eating animals has profound effects on your body, the environment, and of course the animals. And that's when I kind of said, you know what, I don't think I would want to go back to eating any animal products, and I feel good. So why would I do that? And then that's kind of around the time that I also started thinking more seriously about the environment in general, like realizing not just your food choices, but basically any choice in your life has an environmental impact, to the negative. Yes, I forgot about the slide. Sorry. You can go to the next one. And this is completely unrelated, but I guess this is the organic way of style of this event today. So this is a little bit more about me, which is probably the only non-vegan thing about me. And I play a musical instrument called the violin, which is the smaller one. And recently I've been challenged to also play the viola, which is the one on the left. And, just to give a context, and why I brought this up is because I personally feel that it's important that nobody shoots themselves for not being 100% vegan or 100% organic or 100% mm-mm. And this violin, I think, is a really good example because, not to discuss too many people, but the truth of it is that this is made with wood, which is natural. But for example, the varnish is often made with pig's fat, I think. It is a bit disgusting. And then the strings, the modern day violins is not true, but the ones you see pictured here, I'm playing old violins, which are kind of true to the original form of the violin. The strings pictured here are actually sheep guts, that have been, oh, hello, champion Irish violinist as well. This is nice to know. But yes, we're not going too much into gory detail, but these strings are made from dried guts of animals. So but I'm very aware of this, and there are vegan violinists out there who actually have carbon versions or synthetic versions of some of the things that I have mentioned. But at the same time, I'm kind of like, okay, I came by these instruments, not because I went and bought them, but because they kind of came to my path, whether it was introduced to me by a buyer or a friend. And I do value those kinds of serendipitous things that happen in life. And so this could be one aspect of me that is fully not vegan, but I'm actually very proud of. And by the way, I'm an amateur violinist. Thank you. Next slide. And then I thought it was important for me to mention this aspect of me. One, because it is a very important part of me. Like I said, I'm on my Instagram, which is not the personal one, because food is my life, and so I'm always on the food stuff. But also because through running Vagino, the website, it used to be a little bit more where we tried to do events and other things. Until I got pregnant and kind of dialed that down. Through Vagino, I actually met Hélène, who is this woman pictured here with the red. Is this one of her haoris? I think it's a Japanese haori, like a kimono thing. But yes, I met her through Vagino because she works as a sustainability consultant, and she also was doing some podcast series. And at the time, she had just started and was looking for her guest number 2. And that was me. So that's kind of how we met. And we hit it off. And she had told me, hey, you know what? I've had this idea for a while that I've really wanted to do. And I think it will help a lot of people, especially, even us, what is this? Yes, you changed the slide at a perfect timing. What is this? It's some of you may know, it's called Echolocal. And basically we founded it together. And what you see is a map. And that was basically her idea of, hey, let's map out all the locations that, have allow you to make a sustainable consumption choice. And, that seems very, like when you hear it, or when most people hear it, they're like, amazing, I wanted that. But then when you actually get down to doing it, it's like, what is sustainable? What is a sustainable consumption choice now? What do you put on the map? And where we landed is that, hey, like, what is it that we're trying to solve for? We're trying to solve for the fact that, eco choices or sustainable choices are often, and in Japan especially as well, are often seen as things that only people with high minds, and they're educating themselves, they take the time, or they care enough about the world. It's kind of like very, there's also a perception around it, but that it's skewed that only this set type of people will do it. And then on top of that, even if you don't identify yourself as that kind of person, it is generally true that sustainable choices or earth-friendly choices tend to be a little bit more pricier than the alternative in terms of money. And maybe, they're only sold in 10 shops in Tokyo or something, which means that it can be inconvenient to get to. And then, if you're not somebody who cares a lot about it and then has a lot of time, or you don't want to spend your spare time on searching for these things, then, trying to make that choice at all becomes kind of like an information game. Where do I find anything? Where do I start? And so that's where we kind of got back to and said, hey, well, if we want to solve for that, then we want to put as many stores as we can on the map. And so this map, what we are mapping on it are stores that allow you to make the consumption choice that is eco-friendly. And the way that we define that is and also because I'm involved in it, of course, but food is one of the the most food purchase is what you do the most frequently, right? And probably what you spend your time doing and thinking about for the most part. And so we said, hey, food choices, sustainable food choices, and then in terms of food choices, what other different sort of sustainability criteria in terms of impacts that make sense to sort of keep to. And then we came up with 5, which would be plant-based, organic, zero waste, plastic-free, and fair trade. And so, voila, that's what the map helps you find. And thank you, Bianca. We are called Echolocal. The map is called Echolocal. And that's kind of where this is. And I think I just completely cut out where I am on this whole zero waste or minimal waste journey, I guess. So after becoming vegan, what I realized is the environmental impacts. I think we talked that far before we went on to my violin. And in terms of the environment, when you start looking at things like that, you just can't ignore that there's a lot of waste going on. From if you're in Japan, then you probably know this already, but a lot of the vegetables are wrapped again in plastic, and then you go to the cashier and then it's wrapped again, and then they give you a bag to put everything in. So just starting with things like plastic waste, but also coming to realize that, hey, it's not just things like that, but clothes, for example, and as a woman, I kind of like fashion, not too heavy on it, but then it becomes like, yeah, like let's go get the trend that t-shirt is cool, that's cute, and but then by the following year it kind of becomes obsolete. What do you do? I don't know, you either just keep it there in your closet, which I think is a waste of space, or you throw it out, which again is waste in many ways. And so kind of like through coming through veganism, I started to really realize, oh my gosh, there's so much waste. Unbelievable amounts of waste. And that's when I think I really started to sort of like change gears, and then shift that gear even further after meeting Ellen, who is an expert on, you know, all these kinds of plastics and packaging, and then she really helped me to see that I could be doing a lot more. And so it's kind of crazy. If you see my life as a graph, it's like vegan, there's these points. And one of the most recent turning points was obviously last year when I met her. And then since then, it's like pretty much all my food is organic. Not everything, but a lot of the stuff I buy is waste free or at least plastic free. I've started compost. Now, as I mentioned earlier, I have plants growing on my balcony from the compost. And just things like that. And even like on my balcony, I have here with me, this guy was charged by the sun today. So, you know, I'm kind of turning into what my husband and I often joke, I'm a tree hugger now. But I don't know, I think at the end of it, I feel zero stress from it. And it just feels all very obvious to me to just keep on doing these things. Not to brag about it, not to, I don't know, save money from it, but more just because I feel like it's the right thing to do. So yeah, that's kind of where I am. But I will also admit that I'm not zero waste. See, like this, what do you call it? Insect repellent. It's vegan and animal cruelty free, but it's plastic. So I think the point I want to make, like with my violin, is that I think we're all just kind of on a journey, and we shouldn't shoot ourselves for being imperfect or not 100%. So yeah, happy to dive into the discussion with you all today. Thank you, Jack.
Thank you so much, Noriko. That was fantastic. Really, really good. I did have one thing to say. Because you said you're composting, you're growing plants in your balcony, and you're buying insect repellent, I got to say, grow mint. Mint is a natural insect repellent. Super easy to grow and just keeps the bugs away. So give it a try.
Nice. Thank you.
Yeah, right on. Okay. We're going to move on to, well, let me unpin you if I can. I don't know how to do that. Oh, there it is. Move pin. Look at me. I'm doing it. Okay.
You're doing great.
Thanks, Bianca. And it's your turn to do great. And I'm going to pin you right there. And then I'm going to share your stuff. And we're going to get on with some more fun. There we are.
Well, my story isn't as fun as Noriko's, but I'll try my best. So I was born in Romania, Eastern Europe, and I actually grew up in Canada. I came to Japan 10 years ago in 2011, just after the Great Earthquake, so I didn't catch it. And I've worked so the first thing I did when I came to Japan was an internship at Toyota Motors Corporation. And after that, I worked in Tokyo as a business consultant for about 5 years. And while I was pregnant, I went into maternity leave, and suddenly I had to put the brakes on my life. And I realized, like, what am I doing? I'm in Tokyo working in a corporation. This is not what I wanted to do in my life. And I started to think about, like, what is it that I wanted to do when I was a child? And I remember that I was very passionate about the environment. And here I am thinking about, okay, I want to do something related to the environment, but I have no idea what to do. So I just started mindlessly watching videos on YouTube. And one day I found a video about zero waste. And I thought that second, this is it. This is exactly what I want to do for the rest of my life. You know, just like Einstein used to look for that perfect equation with which he can explain the whole universe. In the same way, I thought that zero waste was that perfect thing that if you do 100%, then you can completely change the planet and can change yourself and make the world a better place. So I started on this journey of zero waste, and wow, what a journey. So this is me in 2015 and my first zero waste fair, my first festival, when I first explained what zero waste was. This was in Kanagawa, Ken. And a very, very interesting story I want to tell quickly is that before I went on stage, there were like 100 people waiting. And then the moment I went out stage, suddenly everybody dispersed and left. And even so, as you can see, I was very passionate about my speech, and I spoke in front of two people, my husband and my newborn child. So that's where I started. Now, if you go to the next slide or next picture, you will see, can you hear me? Okay, good. You will see how we did a very interesting project called Dialogue in the Dark, where we used blind people to help us navigate the world. It's called Kansei Design. And that's the first time I started interacting with people with disabilities. We did a lot of these small projects, like participating in fairs, doing different projects with different kind of people. And I started seeing the world not just through the lens of zero waste, but also through the many other, things that I was oblivious before starting the zero waste lifestyle. I was very passionate about zero waste. So if you go to the next picture, you're going to see me at the Hong Kong Zero Waste Week. So I started even traveling abroad, trying to understand what this zero waste means. And it was really difficult in the sense that I had just given birth and I was still lactating. And while people were networking at the event, I was in the bathroom trying to pump milk because I was in pain because I left my child at home. So I thought, like, wow, look at me, I'm doing all of these things to be zero waste. But then I came home to Japan and I realized how difficult it is to actually lead a zero waste lifestyle. And I did a lot of experiments. In the meantime, I also became vegan. I was a vegetarian and I became vegan during this period. And I first realized something interesting. There are times when you have to choose either a vegan product or a zero waste product. Okay, just like Noriko showed the insect repellent. I had the same problem with a lot of stuff, like for example, deodorant, or my favorite example is the toothbrush, because if you want to be zero waste, of course you have to buy a bamboo toothbrush, right? But then the bristles are made of plastic. And so you think, it's like, okay, I cannot buy this one because it's made of plastic. What's the alternative? And the natural alternative was pig hair, I think. In any case, it was like animal hair. And I was like, oh my God, what do I do? Which one do I choose? So I realized how difficult this journey is going to be. Now, I then moved to Fukuoka. And if you see the next picture, we did a lot of startups. So I worked with a lot of companies here in Cisco, but I also worked with a lot of startups in Fukuoka. I was in the startup hub, the startup team Fukuoka hub, where I tried to launch a lot of startups, but we realized how difficult it is to actually develop a social business in the Japanese system. And if you go to the next slide, you will see that I've also done a lot of keynote speeches. This was actually in Osaka. I did a keynote speech at a university, and I realized, wow, Kansai is really lively. So I moved from Fukuoka to Kansai, and I realized people from all of the cities in Kansai, like Kyoto, Kobe, Osaka, they're so passionate about the environment. I thought, okay, this is it. This is where I should be. And if you go to the next slide, you will see that I've also taught in schools, in universities and vocational schools. So I then started thinking about the fact that the generation who's more interested in their environment, in the environment and in their future are the youth. So I started talking at universities and vocational schools, and it was really challenging to talk about social businesses and environmental related topics because um, the students are very international. So I had students from many countries, including the global south, who, if you know what a global south is, it means the poorest countries in the world. And that's the first time I actually realized, like, whatever troubles we have here in Japan, countries in the global south have even bigger problems. Um, so that was again a big wake up call for me. Thank you. You can, yes, go to the next slide. In Osaka, I also participated in the Osaka Innovation Hub, and I pitched a lot of startups. Unfortunately, I never won any competition, although I've been through a lot of pitches. But it was very interesting to see what other startups are doing and what investors are interested in. And it's very interesting to see how people are starting to change, because even though I didn't win this pitch competition, people came to me and said, your idea was actually very interesting and I've never thought about this before. So I can see change coming from all directions. Now, if you go to the next slide, you will see that I also tried to participate in a HULT competition. So I was a judge and an advisor for the HULT Prize. And here is where, again, I started to train young startup entrepreneurs in their journey to, to developing a startup that's not just a future business, but it's a social business. And it was amazing to see how young people are interested in this sort of stuff and how passionate they are and how much they want to learn. Now, if you go to the next slide, you will come to the project that we started last year before Corona. We tried to open our first zero waste store. And somebody in the chat said, can someone please define waste? So I'm going to define waste here, particularly zero waste. First of all, what waste is a process. When you have a process, no matter what it is, either it's a product, the manufacturing of a product, or just any daily habit, there's always waste. And this comes in many forms. In this particular case, zero waste means not releasing any type of waste. Now, there are three types of waste. There is in a process, there are things that create value, that don't create value, and that don't do anything. That's called neutral value. So in this case, zero waste means no negative value. So any process that doesn't bring any value to the overall whatever you're doing is called waste. So we are trying very hard to eliminate all of the things that don't bring value in our life. And now coming back to the slide, we tried to make a shop that doesn't release any waste. And it was supposed to be the first completely 100% zero waste shop in Japan. And we had a very, very interesting concept. We were supposed to make the store completely black, like pitch black. That's why you see we have black wallpaper there. And we had neon lights and everything. And we wanted to introduce people to zero waste in a very fun and interactive way. However, we were supposed to launch the store in April 2020, but in March, the Corona wave first came. And so we were forced to shut it down and to completely kill the whole project. So unfortunately, that didn't happen. But I see that there are many other people in Japan right now who are trying to open a zero waste store, and I'm really, really excited. And I think it's the last picture, right? Let me see.
Yes,
I cannot see anything.
Picture,
yeah,
yes.
That's the last picture. Okay, thank you so much.
Okay.
I think that's it.
Bianca, that was fantastic. Thank you so much. I find everybody who tells their story really has a journey, and that journey is something we can all relate to, because we're all on the path to somewhere, and some of us are just on the path to making as much money as we can until we die, and some of us are on the path to, well, travel the world until we die, and some of us are trying to do this as a cooperative effort, like, let's all get together and, make a difference. And your story and Noriko's story definitely are like that. So thank you both very much. I'd like to now, after we have some time, to say that we're going to probably go until about 9:30, and maybe a little bit later. But if you'd like to unmute yourself and ask questions, that's nice. But if it gets too much, I might ask you to kind of chat them to me first, so that I can give you your turn, so that everybody has a chance to speak. I don't want to make this a competition. And I know a lot of you have a lot of questions and a lot of comments for these lovely ladies. So let's get started. Well, nobody seems to be jumping out of their seats to ask you guys questions, so I have a lot. I would like to know, both of you are mommies, and I am a dad, and I would like to know, what do you think is the number one challenge to being a zero waste mommy?
Wow, the number one.
Okay, what are some of the
Where
top
do I
10
start?
Go ahead, Noriko. Give us 2 or 3.
Okay, I've got a really good example actually. So at some point you really have to choose your battles, is kind of the way I look at this. I don't have a number one, but I have a very good example that illustrates my struggle. Like I said previously, I'm vegan or plant-based. The whole household is, except for the dog, by the way. She refused to go vegan, and we just didn't force it on her. My daughter, she started Hoikuen this April, and one of the things that was on our mind was, can we continue this? Should we continue this, and all that? Clearing all the things, and kind of knowing, reading up on the science, and realizing that, okay, we can continue the veganism with her. The next question was, the how. And luckily we found and got a spot at a Hoikuen that is so far been very flexible. Initially they were like, we don't allow you to bring your bento, and we don't make vegan food, but ultimately they said to us, you know what, we were willing to try to make the vegan kyushoku, but like, we don't actually know what veganism is, so can you please bring your bento for now? And so from April until today, I've been sending my daughter with a vegan bento. So that's great. But then when we initially had this conversation, this was a week before she joined, she actually started going. They were like, okay, so we kind of looked into it. We can't do it. Can you bring a bento? Yes. Oh, and by the way, on your checklist, it says that you also do cloth nappies. I was like, yeah. They were like, we've also never done cloth nappies. And I was like, you gotta be kidding. By the way, they are a new nursery. They've only been up and running for 2 years. But I was also kind of like, 2 years and you've never had a single parent with a cloth nappy, which was a bit weird. And then I said, just by the look on their face, they were like, you also want cloth nappies? So I said, you know what? I bring bento, and then we'll work it out another day of whether we can transition to, like, just the vegan version of it. One day kyushoku provided by them. So let's start with me bento, and then why not, let's start with a conventional commercial, Pampers. Let's go that way, yeah. And they were like, thank you so much. And I just thought, that right there is kind of like what I mean by fighting your battles. Like, I could have pushed it, and I think they would have been quite flexible enough had I come up with a very, whatever, stringent operational, how do we do this? And but the thing was, like, the human side of me, or kind of the, the whatever side of me, was like, okay, you kind of land somewhere, you start somewhere, and then maybe you work it out, and maybe also in that meantime you can kind of teach them or talk to them about why I'm doing this. And so far I think it's working. And one good point in this, to finish it off, is that before we finish this, like, pre nursery orientation, they were like, oh, and by the way, this is the checklist for your everyday stuff, and at the bottom of it, it says 2 times plastic bags to put all the dirty clothes in. And I said, does this have to be plastic bags? They were like, what can it be? You know, they were like, what is this woman gonna say now? And I said, can it be reusable? Like, what's the criteria? Not leaking? And they were like, yeah, not leaking. I said, right, I'll do that. I bring reusable. Is that okay? They were like, yeah, sure. And so, you know, it's kind of, we landed at a nice sweet spot. We'll see how that goes. But that's kind of my, I think, a good example to illustrate my big sort of the way that I go about that, being a mom and trying to be zero waste person.
That was a great answer. I mean, that's a whole experience right there. And I just want to add, just as a little comedy relief, you said before that, oh my gosh, Japanese just love wrapping their vegetables in plastic, but you expect them to wrap their poo in cloth. I mean, I mean, that's a pretty no-brainer to me. They're going to want plastic for that one too. But I mean, it is true. I mean, we went through the same decision about cloth versus plastic. And as soon as I turned on my wife, she said, so you're going to wash the cloth nappies, right? And I'm like, so there, it's so true. You have to take things in perspective and in stride, and you can't do it all. And I think that's one thing about zero waste that I think distracts a lot of people is how can you be zero waste? In fact, the buddy of mine who I was talking about in my little introduction there, who smokes cigarettes and eats meat and all those bad things, and he said, how are you zero waste? I said, well, you live naked in the woods. And he said, yep, that's it. And I said, I think the zero waste thing is not really defining that they are exactly zero waste. It's kind of an idea, it's a goal, it's a representation of what they think is important. And I mean, it's like shooting for the mountaintop, but you're going to settle for base camp because you can't do it all. You just can't. And that's the whole thing, is if we slow our roll on waste, I think it's going to make a huge difference for everybody on this planet and everybody who's going to be on this planet. And I think that's the important thing. So great answer, Noriko. Bianca, did you want to go ahead?
Yes, just to build on whatever you said about going on top of the mountain, I always say this: if you have very high goals and you strive to reach them, if you fail, you probably achieve this much. But if you strive to have small goals and you fail, you probably not achieve anything at all. So it's better to strive and fail and do as much as you can. And then at one point in time, you realize, wow, look at how far I've gotten, and you think like, wow, if I wasn't aiming for zero waste, I wouldn't have been this far in the first place. And just like Noriko said, I had the same experience with nappies. And my problem was that my child was very small, physically very small. She was born in less than 2 kilograms. So I just couldn't put nappies on her, cloth nappies, because they were much too big and bulky. So I had to think about what am I going to do. So I went online and researched, right? And I found a lot of interesting, innovative stuff like nappies made from rice. Right. Yeah, right? And that was amazing. And I mean, I've tried a lot of things, and the problem is that it was too expensive. Right. So that was one thing that I had to kind of like discuss with my husband and think like, well, they are expensive, but there's zero waste. And, I mean, it's the cost. It's not only if you pay for the conventional nappies, you pay a certain cheap price, but think about the long term or like the bigger picture. Think about the perspective. You're also paying for an environmental problem, and we all know how conventional nappies are a huge environmental problem. But because we're talking about nappies, I want to ask Chuck, what do you think about human waste? Because before the existence of regular toilets, we were doing our stuff in the woods, right? So we take the nutrients, right? We eat stuff, and then those nutrients are flushed down the toilet and taken into who knows where. We should totally we need to return the nutrients to the soil. So then my question, I mean, my question back then, and I want you to complete this answer for me, is how do I take the children's waste, which is not yet as toxic as like a grown up waste, and make it sustainable? Is it possible to do that in agriculture today, do you think, if you know the answer to that?
If this is addressed towards the farmer in the room, I do have
Yes.
something to say, but I'm willing to open that up to anybody else who might have something to say about that.
Please.
I do have one comment. In Japan, we used to have a very circular thing, including waste in the Edo period. I don't know if you know. And there was a high price on human waste of people who ate well. So the wealthier people, they had toilets, but they didn't flush all the way right to the water. It was, I don't know. They had it in the house, and then there was like a dump, and then the
Yep.
kind of the low paid people would collect the dump. But there was a higher price on the market for the waste of the people who lived in good neighborhoods. Sorry,
Yeah.
I just had to say that.
I think it's all in the marketing. I mean, really, when you've got waste for sale, it's really a good ad campaign that gets that out the door. Honestly, I'm going to address this, and then I've got a few questions in the chat to talk about. Bianca, this is a great point. I mean, this is something that I think you know a lot about, and it's something that I'm going to struggle with the name of. Is it called a circular economy? That
Yes.
kind of thing,
Yes.
where things are coming back and feeding back into the loop. And I gotta say, this is what changed my life about organic farming. It is the only real circular economy of necessary value that I've ever found in my life, which is why it's so stimulating and wonderful for me. It's hard as heck, and I'm burnt from the sun and I'm cold from the wind, but every time I'm out on my farm, I realize, wow, I'm lucky enough to be a part of this. And yes, it is absolutely possible. And what you're talking about is exactly true, which is why we compost our kitchen scraps. If we're lucky, and Nori, I have a few questions for you about your composting program because it's urban, but this is the ticket. I mean, once we start putting our nutrients back into the soil from our bodies and from our waste products like composting, suddenly we're eliminating the need for shipping all and mining all these other minerals that are necessary for plants and everything. We're just feeding back into the natural system because composting is the natural way. Just like the bacteria in our gut, our gut bacteria digesting our food, when it's a very healthy sort of environment, our bodies are healthy. We're healthy people. And when the soil is full of these healthy bacteria that compost our kitchen waste and our excrement and things like that, the soil is very healthy. So the plants that grow on them are also very, very strong. So that gives the plants more nutrients, that gives the vegetables more nutrients, gives us more nutrients. I don't see a downside to this. So bye, buddy. So I got to say, zero waste, composting human waste. This is something I'm very, very interested in. Not because I like feces or anything like that, but because I see the incredible value to it. And like you said, the waste, and it doesn't just go who's nowhere. It goes to the ocean, of course, or to the river systems or the waterways, where it nitrifies the environment and just is a terrible effect on the environment. So we really should be composting our poop. Yes, absolutely. Okay. Yes,
We have
Lindsay
a
Mori,
question.
who's
Yeah, I had
who's a friend of mine, is joining us from Kyoto. She says she would like to contact you off Zoom if you'd be willing to come to a uni class or organize a conference. So if you don't mind, I might connect you guys on Messenger afterwards. Noriko, Bianca, and Lindsay. Is that okay? Okay,
Yeah.
great. And then Lindsay comes back with a big punch in the stomach. How can we be active and put pressure on the big companies to change? Ooh, big question. Go.
I can answer that. Noriko, do you want to start or?
No, you go.
No, go ahead. Go ahead.
Okay. First thing I want to say is for everybody in here and everybody who's going to listen after this, is they need to remember two things. They need to remember one thing: the fact that governments and big corporations are the slowest to change. And that's mostly because, first of all, governments, they plan ahead with many, many years ahead. So whatever policy we see happening now, that was planned years ago. And luckily with COVID-19, the government finally saw the possibility to change really fast. So I think this is the perfect time in history to start pressuring the governments to change, because now they know it's totally possible. And I also said about corporations, in the same way, corporations, they have they have to go through many levels of management before they actually start implementing something, and they have to plan a lot in advance. Especially Japanese companies, who they have the PDCA, and they have to plan whatever moves they're going to make, and they have to do market research and stuff like that. So the best thing that you can do as a consumer is what we say, to vote with your purchase, or to vote with your wallet. Whatever you buy, whenever you buy something, you send a message to the corporations by saying, I want more of this. Whenever you don't buy a product, even if so, sometimes the product that is existing on the market is very good, but it's in plastic, it's not vegan, it's not cruelty free, it's a complete nightmare, right? And there are other smaller companies, very new companies coming in with very innovative products, but are not as good as the regular conventional product. So you have to think about it. Like I said, with the nappies, like, what do I want to buy? I know it's more important. I know it's easier to buy the more convenient, cheaper version. But imagine that by buying the the low quality, newer product, you are giving them a message to the world. And I want to give you a very nice example of how normal people manage to change, and that is Colgate. I don't know if Colgate is common in Japan, but it's very common in Europe. And when I went back to Europe, I was very surprised to find that Colgate is selling bamboo toothbrushes and cruelty-free vegan toothpaste in recyclable packaging. So that's why I think just by voting with your purchase, you can make a change. And the question was actually about the government. The governments always listen to their citizens. So what can you do is you can go to your local city hall and you can ask questions. Just by asking questions, and you'll see how amazing it is to just go to your city hall and ask questions. People are going to freak out. Like, that's my favorite thing to do. And they're going to try to help you, and you're going to realize how many problems there are in the city halls that they are trying so hard to solve, but it's never that easy. So what you can do is work with the city hall, but not directly with the city hall, but through a nonprofit organization. So try to find a few nonprofits in your area or in your city and contact them and see what you can do together, because numbers count. Definitely numbers count. And that's it. Thank you for coming to my TED Talk.
No, Bianca, that was awesome. That was awesome. Maybe Noriko has something more to say.
Yeah, I think it's pretty much sort of what I had in mind as well. If to add, I have two things. One is I actually work in Amazon. Dun, dun, dun. A lot of people are like, "Oh my god, that company." And I'm actually peace of my. I did have some sort of back and forth with myself, but I'm at peace with myself now. And so I kind of think that, to add to what Bianca said, if you're already working in a company of some size, I do actually plan to leave it one day, like soon. But until that time, there's actually things that you can also do, and big companies, if and when they do make the change, it's fast and it's impactful. And one example from Amazon, and I'm really not trying to promote Amazon or anything, but they were very, very fast to reduce the plastic cushion that they often are famous for using in their oversized boxes. They've recently turned to more paper, and I have not really gotten much plastic from ordering from them when I do. So that was one thing I wanted to add. A second thing is kind of just to add on to Bianca's point is, I think Bill Gates recently said this in some podcast or something I heard my husband listening to, but and he said the same thing as what Bianca said, which is, look, if you have not the luxury of money, but like if you have money and you have that choice, then make that vote with your money, because that's the responsibility that you have if you have that money. I think the point you were saying is that, not if you're poor and like you're scrambling to make everyday work, then that's not your responsibility. Your responsibility is to carry on your life. But if you're at that stage where you might have some savings, or you have abundance, and you can make that choice, then it is your responsibility to make that choice through buying something that could be incrementally more expensive, but that is the vote, and that is your responsibility. So just wanted to add that.
That's great. That's great. I think people have to keep in mind that a lot of zero wasters, if that's the correct term, I don't want to be, one of those people who titles or labels people, but I say it with love. The zero wasters, again, it's a goal. It's an endeavor. It's something that like joggers try to do. They get up at 4 a.m. every day and go jogging for 3 hours. They're crazy, but they do it because it feels good. And zero wasters have felt this feeling like there's so much problems with the environment and with the world today. This is something that I can do, and it makes me feel good about it. And I think that's a great reason to do it. It really, really is. I'm going to address some questions that some other people have posted. There's a lot of them. I'm going to skip Ash K's question just for the moment because I want to get back to it. But Griffey says, hey, to convince the corporations to change, you should just become a big company and drive change and profit. That's a great idea. I think that's fantastic. I mean, that is the dream, is if we could all create, or some of us could create, these corporations that are about the green way and the natural way, and show people like this is the alternative. We're not.
Yes, join
McDonald's.
Echolocal, please.
Yeah, I mean,
that's exactly why we're a KK, by the way. we believe that growth will impact numbers.
Kabushiki Gaga.
Kabushiki Gaga.
Yeah, nice. Yeah, I mean, I think that is the way. And Griffey, that's a good point.
Yeah, but it's not that easy.
No,
it's not something that you can decide to do.
No, I'll just become a corporation. Yeah, no. But Regna says about composting human waste. Check out this book, Pipe Dreams: Reimagining the Toilet. And this is something I'm going to put in the show notes later. So if you're watching on YouTube or even now and you want the link to that, I'll be putting it in the show notes at the end, along with some other things.
Can I just add to that, Chuck? Just one more thing.
Sure. Go ahead.
On that, it's like reimagining what the toilet could be, and that circular, use of our human waste, which is huge a problem. So in systemic in infrastructure, but it's also I've got a home bio kit from Israel where I'm going to use my own human waste for gas for cooking. So again, it has to start individually, but there is an infrastructure level that has to be dealt with too. But it's awesome. It's a great book, Pipe Dreams.
Thank you, Nick, and thanks for saying that. I appreciate that. If you have any other links, please post them in the chat, and I'll put them in the show notes.
Also, I want to mention just a second. Also, please stay tuned to whatever Fukuoka City is doing, because 2 years ago when I was there, the mayor was very passionate about creating this system of taking human waste and transforming it into energy. I don't know where the level is right now, but yeah, let's definitely check that out.
I think somebody else said that, maybe Lindsay too. Good one. Victoria Zuri, who also lives in Kyoto and is a friend of mine, had some really interesting things to say. First of all, I heard cat excrement is bad for plants, that plants die from it. I have heard similar things, so you probably shouldn't be using animal waste directly on your compost or on your plants, to make sure to compost them first in a proper way, but that some animal waste is not very good for plants at all. So, good point. Victoria also said she may have missed this part, but how did you get, this is to Noriko, by the way. Noriko, how did you get your husband to be on board of being zero waste and vegan? She's met with a lot of opposition.
Oh, that is so funny. Sorry, I shouldn't laugh, but it's a classic. I think.
Like you hit the jackpot kind of thing, right?
Yes. No, I'm kidding. Okay. Well, first thing, the vegan part. he was actually the vegan, and although I grew up in London, I only knew about vegetarianism because I don't think veganism was that common back then. And so that's one. He didn't convince me at all. Actually, I just jumped in because it looked weird and interesting. But he was the vegan. And in terms of what kind of vegan, there isn't a kind of vegan, but he turned vegan for the animals. So his primary driver is not necessary, or was not, the environment, let's say. But as a human, he does have some traits that I think, I don't know about, and I don't want to generalize, but from other men that I have met in my life, as friends or have gone out with or whatnot, he did already have the qualities of caring for the environment. And one example is, by the way, he's from Israel, so maybe I'll get myself one of those gas making poo to gas things. But like, for example, we met and I noticed that I never heard him go to the shower. I was like, dude, you went to the shower? He's like, yeah. One, it's fast, and two, I never hear the shower, and the shower is pretty loud, right? And what I realized is he's basically showering tricklets. Like, he just puts on the shower like this, so it's just trickling, not like the shower. And I asked him why, and he said, I'm conserving water. So I think there was already qualities in him that, like, he's very thoughtful in his day to day. Having said that, like, I'm the one who sort of pushed in this house to go plastic free and organic. And I think it was just that he wasn't, I don't know if convinced, but reading up on the science, and I'm sure this could cause a lot of debate, but being predominantly plant-based in your diet is one of the single most effective ways, if you have to choose one, in terms of negating your impact to the planet. Of course, if you're vegan, but you eat a lot of junk that's wrapped in a lot of plastic that's imported from all over the world, then of course that at some point is not going to be true. But in general, that seems to hold true with the numbers, and I think that's how my husband kind of lived until he met me, which is I still will care for the planet, but only to some extent that is not going to inconvenience me or is not going to make me use more time. And that's why I think, Victoria, to your point, it was a little bit easier for me anyway, because I think he had it there. It's just some of the other things that causes a little bit more expense, like organics or plastic free. It's kind of just an open conversation and saying, look, I prefer it, or sometimes even kind of using the me card. I just like organics because they taste better. I want it, do it for me. That's been used as well, to be honest. And then other things like I've been keeping a plastic diary since January 2021. So kind of on the first day of January, every day I weigh my plastic waste. And I think just him seeing that sort of challenge of mine, he's open to help out, right? So he tries to buy, if he goes grocery shopping, because sometimes we can't do all organics, he will come home with less plastic than before, plastic packaged, things. So I think it's just, there's many ideas, but one is I would just play the me card. It's important for me. I do it a lot.
That's a good answer. That's a really good
Like
answer. Thanks, Noriko. We've got a bunch of other stuff coming up. We had a few people leave. Joan and Catherine, thanks for joining us. Sorry you had to go so soon. What else? I have some other things to say, but I want to get back to Ashke's question, which is going to be something you all may want to discuss. But he asked, what are some of your favorite ways to reduce trash?
Well, I know he's in India.
Yeah, he did say
So
he's in India.
he India has a very big trash problem. And
as far as
whatever,
producing a lot or not being able to process all.
both. I mean, they're not really. I mean, India has a very different kind of infrastructure compared to Japan because their economy is not as good as Japan. And I'm going to give you a very quick example. In Japan, usually we try to buy, for example, when we buy shampoo, we try to buy the biggest bottle we can so it can last longer. Or that's what I saw, because I don't buy shampoo in a bottle anymore. But the thing is that in India, because they're really poor, they cannot buy a bottle of shampoo. So what they do is that every week or every month they buy little packets, little samplers of shampoo. So they make a lot of trash only through like those teeny tiny little packets. So they have to always buy a little very often. Whilst in Japan, you have the choice to buy a lot at the same time. Like if you go to Costco, if you can go to Costco, or if you have a car and you can go to a farmer's market, you can just buy a lot. And just to answer to that question that he asked, my favorite way to be zero waste is to reduce my trash is to kind of find all the small places that have, for example, loose vegetables that are not in plastic. And I go to a different store and I buy soy milk in a glass bottle, because that's the only store in like 10 kilometers, in an area of 10 kilometers, that has that. So that's my biggest challenge, but also it's fun for me. It's like an adventure. It's very nice when I walk sometimes in a neighborhood that I've never been before, and suddenly I find a small shop selling tofu that is sold like as they used to sell like 10 years ago, maybe, in those little carts in water without any plastic packaging. So in Akshay's situation, I don't know what his situation in his neighborhood is, but yeah, I
Yeah.
hope. Yeah.
Thank you, Bianca. Just I want to add on something on this. So I totally agree. Like the kind of shampoo which mostly Indians use. So usually in cities it is not like that, but in rural villages where people don't have access to big superstores or something like that, so they use those small sachet of shampoos, and sometimes oil also come in there. So yes, that's a very big problem in rural areas, but in cities or metropolitan the big places, so people like you buying the bottles and everything. So we are trying to move towards the sustainable thing. And I would just like to share. Just I will take 1 minute in towards this, achieving zero waste. Like I have also started. Sometimes I go to grocery shopping, and in India, it is not like Japan, big superstores where we can define that. So there are local sellers. So they use lots of plastic bags. So for each different vegetable, they put it in the different plastic and they give it to us. So one day, like what idea came to me is like I collected all the waste cloths from my friends' neighborhood, whichever the clothes they are not using. After sanitizing them, washing them, I hired one tailor and just told them, okay, this is the kind of sample bag, eco bag you can make, and just cut these cloths and make hundreds of bags. So I kept those bags with the shopkeeper. So instead of handing over the polythene bags, he's just putting some all veggies in the cloth bags and handing over to them free. So gradually it creates the awareness, and I like put it the poster, bring your own bags whenever you come to shopping. So I'm seeing that in my locality, many people are started using their own eco bags, and the polythenes are reduced gradually. So we can pursue this kind of like things also. Thank you so much.
That's a great initiative,
you.
Ashkay. Thank you for sharing.
Thank you.
Okay,
Noriko?
we've got some other things on the list here that are quite important. By the way, Victoria to Noriko, you're a lucky girl.
Thank you.
And Kia, also from Kyoto, a good friend of mine, she said hi. She teaches at university and found that students are more interested in sustainability, SDGs in particular, in recent years, which is great. However, there is very little interest or understanding in SDG goal number 16, peace, justice, and strong institutions. As someone with a peace and conflict background, this is concerning to me because if you do not have peace, stability, and security, you cannot have sustainability. Think environmental justice, resource-based conflicts, climate refugees, etc. What are the speakers thought about this, especially in relation to Japan? Now, this is clearly a very deep
issue. So if you guys have anything to say, Noriko and Bianca, about, again, environmental justice, resource-based conflicts, or climate refugees, please, you can talk about those 10.
I talked a lot. Noriko, do you want to? I have a lot to say about this, so I don't want to take the limelight.
I think we all have a lot to say, but yeah, I think what comes to, I totally agree. Without that stability, there's no sustainability. I think if everyone is familiar with Maslow's triangle, it's like this guy called Maslow came up with a triangle, and the very bottom is basically your safety. I could be messing this up, and then followed by something like your physical, you're physically fulfilled, i.e. you've ate, you've slept, you're fine, and then it's the emotional and so basically after you've fulfilled every step, your thoughts kind of and your passions go to the things in the next sort of step in the triangle or pyramid. And basically what I'm trying to say is, unless you're safe, you're fed, you're sleeping, you have a house, and you don't really think about, okay, what about that person? Okay, what about that country? What about the planet? And so I totally agree that without that stability, that there's no base or anything for sustainability. I think, to be honest, as a Japanese person, it's sad but true that we just don't get enough exposure to what's happening both within our country and also outside of our country. Again, one good example is the recent news that we have, I think, all heard about Israel. So, of course, my husband being Israeli, I did hear about it maybe a lot earlier than the average Japanese person. But for me, it was interesting to see exactly how many days it took for it to actually be on the Nikkei newspaper, which is the most read newspaper in Japan. And I think it took more than 8 days. And in this particular war or shooting, it took 11 days for them before they stopped firing at each other. So basically, before it was, yes, it was before it was over, but it was practically, by the time things were kind of calming down, Japanese people realized for the first time that Israel and Israelis and Palestinians are having this going on in the other side of the world. And that's not a first, right? Like, because I read English, sorry, I do have a lot of non-Japanese friends, and because of that, through Facebook or whatever media, I do feel that I see a lot of international whatnot, including things to do with not just war, yeah, but environment or other things. And then when I sort of hone in and think of, okay, what's happening on the Japanese speaking side, or people who read Japanese, sadly, it's a couple days, maybe, or even weeks. There's a gap of when that awareness reaches us or people who are predominantly Japanese speakers in Japanese. And so I think that's kind of what is behind maybe what you mentioned as lack of interest in sort of the justice and the social problems and all of that. And I think we just really, I could talk forever on this topic. My short answer is that I think it's partly to do with our education. It's not the fact that we're a I can never say this word, homogeneous nation where most of us are ethnically Japanese. Because if you look at some other countries who are kind of homogeneous too, I don't think it's an excuse. I think it goes down to the fact that our education is quite one way. We don't encourage, freedom of thought and opinion. If you get, the year wrong, what year did World War II start? And you write, I don't know, 1938, then boom, you got it wrong. Not, hey, maybe it was 1938 because of this particular event that triggered the series of events that led to World War II. If that's the answer, maybe in another country, you would get points for that on your exam. But in Japan, however you explain it, if you write 1938, then you're not going to get any points. You're going to get 0. And so I don't want to say blame, but I really think that we are at a stage where if we don't change our education soon, from kind of the fundamental, the basic, the primary education, basically all kinds of education, sadly, that's not something that we can change overnight. That's my views on that.
No, Noriko, what you said was brilliant. brilliant. I mean, it's something a lot of us don't think about. And thank you, Kia, for bringing this point up, because it is something that's vital. And Noriko, I think you may have accidentally touched on something that I identify with, and that is that Japan didn't know about it for over a week. And I think that is very telling of our societies. And it's really the countries that are suffering from this that, of course, know it first. And it's those of us who are not suffering who are kind of given a pass. We're allowed to not to suffer for what these other people are suffering. And that addresses a very bigger issue. But that I think in order for those of us to become more aware of these things, it's more important to build communities, and it's more important to have chances or opportunities for people to learn about these things and to talk about these things. And I'm so glad you asked this point, Kia, and I know you well, and I'll thank you in person soon, next time I drop off a basket of vegetables for you. But I got to say, this is something that touches everybody on this planet. So thanks for asking. And maybe, I'm sure Bianca has something to say.
Yes. I'm looking at the time. We have like 15 more minutes. So.
Oh, that's correct. Thank you for saying that.
I'll try to be as fast and short as possible.
Take your time.
It's difficult. It's a very difficult topic, but I want to start with this. Until about 100 years ago, we didn't have internet. We weren't connected to 7.7 billion people instantly in this world. So we didn't have this kind of information about what our neighbors are doing. Also, we didn't have the capacity to exchange goods at the speed that is the speed today, right? I mean, we can order something from abroad and it arrives through a plane the next day from that country, and maybe it takes less than a week to get to us if we're lucky. So we are all connected today in a way that it wasn't possible for until 100 years ago. So this gives us extra responsibility today that we didn't have. So we are not used to, as a human population, as a species, we are not used to dealing with global problems. We weren't thinking about those things a few hundred years ago. So now we have to think not just about our family, not just about our community, but we have to think about the whole world, because everything we think, say, and do affects somebody that we've probably never met that lives halfway across the world. What I buy today, what I do today, my habits, what I tell people, what I chat with people online can affect someone instantly, or can have a ripple effect on the long term on someone. So we really need to start being aware of all these problems that are going on. And just like Kia said, every country is different. Japan is very peaceful, and there's also this term called heiwa boke, right? Japan is so peaceful that people just started to like rely so much on the government and like on other people that they're not aware of many things around them. And also their education doesn't provide this kind of information. Just like Noriko said, it's very passive, right? You just try to absorb information and you're not allowed to take it out, right? Anyway, and what I wanted to say is that not every country has the possibility that Japan has. You cannot ask people from Israel, you cannot ask people from Myanmar if you know the Myanmar situation. You cannot ask people who are refugees. You cannot ask people in Bangladesh who are struggling with completely different problems than Japan is struggling with. You cannot ask them to be zero waste. You cannot ask them to be vegan. You cannot ask them to be all these things. So what this means is, because Japan is so affluent, because many Japanese people don't even know how blessed they are. They perceive themselves as being poor, but actually they're not. They have the ability to impact people that they've never met in countries that they're probably never going to visit, just by changing their habits at home, just by becoming more aware, by educating themselves. You know, when you scroll down Facebook, you kind of see other people's pictures of like weddings and travels, but also sometimes you see a post about the environment, sometimes you see a post about what's happening in Israel. You kind of scroll and don't read it. But it's very important for us as humans to stop and read even the information that is painful, to educate yourself even on the stuff that doesn't make you uncomfortable. And I have this quote that I like, that is, you have to get comfortable with being uncomfortable, because we are creatures of consequence. So everything we do affects other people. So we need to kind of elevate our thought in our life based on that. That's it. Oh, you're muted.
Very good answer, Bianca. I'm going to try to remember what I said. But the fact that we can recognize our impact on the environment is why we're here right now, is because we're all interested in zero waste. What's it about? What can we do? And it's why I continue to be an organic farmer, why this year, after 25 years of teaching, I gave up teaching just to farm, because you feel the way, you feel the righteousness of it, and you understand that it's possible. And that is such an empowering thing for anybody, is all the pressure and all the problems and all the heartache and the suffering that you've heard about or read about or feel about. Suddenly you feel like, oh, this isn't like that. This is the way that we can actually make it work. And suddenly it becomes much more exciting than going to McDonald's or getting a new dress or going to an athletic meet or something like that. It's because simply sitting on the beach, eating an apple that you picked, watching the sunset is the best thing in the world. And this is the thing that I think people could have a lot more access to if they're just introduced to it, if they're just given the opportunity to feel it, that personal experience, like I said before. Again, as a teacher for forever, I know that's the way. That's the way people learn, is when they feel it themselves. You can't tell a person how great it is to go hiking. You just got to take them hiking. So, great points. I'm sorry, I'm going to try to address some of the other things that are on here. We've only got about 9 more minutes. Let's see. Lots of people saying thanks so much because they've learned a lot, but they had to get off for one reason or another. And let's see. Zero Waste Japan says, unlearning and understanding the privilege. I agree. Very, very good. And yep, Kia comes back and says, thank you both. Education is absolutely key. And yeah, I think that Clementine was kind of trying to touch back on a point, and Clementine is fantastic. She's a woman who takes used kimono and other textile goods and makes bags and things like that. She's absolutely lovely. If you don't know her already, you should. And she asked about how do you deal with the dilemmas you mentioned? I'm afraid we don't really have time to go into this in depth. And she knows there's no right answer, but I think I'm just going to express her interest in it to show that it's important to everyone, that we all have questions, that we all have doubts, we all have fears. And honestly, once we take on the yoke of zero waste or organic or vegan, we feel burdened at the same time, because not only are we being challenged in our choices and limited in our choices, but also suddenly, are we acceptable in society? I mean, really, especially if we have kids, are we going to raise our kids that way? And are they going to be acceptable in society? I know with my son, who looks more like me at this point than my wife, unfortunately, who's beautiful. But he's already, handicapped with that because he goes to Japanese public school. Now he's going to be like, oh, I don't eat meat. I don't believe in that stuff. Boy, the people are going to throw rocks at him. So there are challenges for all of us. That's the thing to remember. We're all in this together, and just trying to make a difference. Just trying a little bit. Go vegan one day. Bring your own bag one time. Feel that. Just feel what that feels like. And I gotta say, more than half the time you're going to feel good about yourself. And yeah, I got to say that it is the way. It is the way. Let's see. I think we've reached the end of the chats. So we have exactly 5 minutes and change. Noriko, I know you have to go. So I'd like to turn the stage over to you and say, do you have anything else you'd like to talk about? Any links or ideas about Echolocal that you'd like to share before you have to get off? And I know you've got your mommy duties, and we all understand.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Yeah, I'm on my iPad, so I can maybe send you the links later. But yes, I would like to say something about that. But also a shout out to Clementine because I happen to have one of her masks made out of upcycled kimono, I think. Yes, and it's amazing. So just putting it out there. It's very nice. So yeah, like just I think on a closing note from me is including dilemmas, including sort of where you are. I think the most important thing is just be happy with what you're doing. And I think the very fact, I always feel like the very fact that you have a dilemma, be proud of it. The fact that you have a dilemma is that you're already saying, this is plastic, but it's cruelty free. You're already there. Like, forget it. You have a dilemma, pat yourself on the back, you're already there. Is kind of how I look at it, talking to some other people who don't even have the dilemma, right? And it's like, why are you not eating meat again? So I don't think there is the us versus them. And I don't think that being vegan or plastic free or whatever makes you better or worse. But I just think in the context of, if you are striving to do something a little better for the environment, then the fact that you already have a dilemma is kudos to you. So that was my message. And then sort of just as a little PR of Echolocal, yes, the link and the map I will share. And it's actually something that if you have something in your area and you'd like to share, your favorite tofu store, Bianca, that you found hidden somewhere in the alley, you can also submit that on the website. And then if you are in the Tokyo area, we do have an event this Saturday at Fab Cafe Shibuya area, where we actually have something called a bit of a matsuri. It's called the Loop, where you can have vegan karaage. You can do a clothes swap, which is something I don't think we discussed today, but basically instead of dumping your clothes, you give it to somebody else. And so what was once loved becomes loved again. And there's a corner to do your own dye. Aizome from Tokushima. I'm from Tokushima too, the aizome, the blue dye. It's a very beautiful Japanese dye. There's a workshop for that. And Minimal Living Tokyo, who sells very nice sort of zero waste lifestyle friendly goods. They also will have a little shop where you can actually get things like non-bottle shampoo, like bar shampoo or bar dishwasher soap and stuff like that. So that's something that's coming up Saturday if you feel like taking a look. And thank you all so much. Thank you, Chuck, for having us. That's it from me.
Oh, Noriko, thank you so much. We'll probably continue a few more minutes so nobody has to unplug, but I'm going to let Noriko listen until she has to get off. I'm going to pass right over to Bianca.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Noriko. That was amazing, the talk that we had today. And I'm very happy for the opportunity to talk to you guys. I'm so excited. And I want to tell you a very short personal story. When I started the zero waste journey, at first I was very depressed in the sense that it was very hard. It was it was eating me on the inside because I could see suddenly I could see all the problems in the world, and I could see not just environmental problems, but also social problems. And it was very overwhelming. And it was hard because I had to research everything. I had to experiment all by myself. I failed a lot. But and at one point in time, I did give up. Okay, I did throw away the towel and I said, I'm not doing this anymore. This is too much. I'm a fresh mother. I just can't. And and I also got a divorce, so I'm a single mom now. I have to do this on my own. Like, I'm not gonna have it. But then as time passed, it felt even worse. So knowing that I can do something and not doing it because it doesn't feel comfortable, or because it's depressing, or because it makes me feel bad, felt worse. Okay, so it's worse to give up and not do when you know you can do something. And something during this journey changed. My mentality completely changed. At one point, I said, why am I so sad about everything? Like, this is such a fun adventure. I've had so much fun doing this. And I just want to tell anyone how important mentality is. When you start, you start doing things because it's fun, and you fail and you say, like, ah, I failed again, but it's okay because I learned something new today. I realized something very important. Progress is happiness. Okay? Happiness equals progress. So the more I progressed, the happier I felt and the better I felt for myself. And I thought to myself, wow, look at me. I'm a pioneer. I'm doing stuff that other people are not doing. It's hard, but I'm doing it. I'm a vegan. I'm zero waste. I research about social stuff. I give to charity. I do this and blah blah blah. Wow, look at me. I'm amazing. And suddenly my confidence raised and I felt much better. So it's all the psychology, and I want people to know, who's watching, that you don't have to do everything right now. You don't have to be perfect. Do what you do when you can with what you have. Sorry, do what you can when you can with what you have, and strive for progress. Okay, and enjoy the ride. It's fun.
That's great, Bianca. Thank you so much. And there's one thing I want to touch on again. It's that we're often in our society taught to celebrate outside and to suffer inside. And that's just not the way. I mean, especially when you're doing something that's so hard and so kind of against the grain of society, whether it's zero waste, organic farming, or whatever. It's something that we should talk about the hard times. We should share those things, because I've always loved the old maxim. It's like, joys shared or joys doubled, and suffering shared is suffering halved. And it's so true, because we all bear the burden in our lives of this suffering, and we all want to do better, and we're all trying to do better. And those are the things that we really should also be talking about. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for the opportunity to talk about this.
Oh, anytime, anytime. I don't see any real new comments that really come up. Just a whole lot of thanks to the both of you. And I want to add to that my great thanks to the both of you for taking your time and energy out of your busy days and schedules to do all the prep work we did with all the photos and all the chats and all the details and everything else. It's just the kind of background stuff, but that's kind of building the foundation for something that's important, and that's why I enjoy it. I mean, I came back from the farm an hour and a half before we had to start, and I was crazy busy, but I was so excited to get on and do this, because I know this kind of thing is important. Just I know zero waste. It's a great idea. It gives people the opportunity. It gives people the excuse to get out there and to do something different, to do something that's not only interesting and educational, but important for every single human on this planet and everyone who will follow after. So I really encourage everyone to look up these two ladies, Bianca and Noriko, and find out more about them. Echolocal, the Zero Way, great things coming, great things already. And I want to say a big thank you to everyone who joined us. Thank you for your comments, your questions, and just for sitting there and listening. Oftentimes, a voice just wants an audience, and you provided that. Thank you so, so much. This has nothing to do with me. This is all about Bianca and Noriko. So again, I want to say thank you. And if you're watching this on YouTube, if you can like and subscribe, that would really help me to understand that these things are important. I should do them more, and I will do my best to bring great people onto this stage to give them an opportunity to share their experiences, so we can all get together and try to make a difference. If there's no other questions,
Be the change.
yes, then there should be no problems. We can all make a difference. Thank you, everybody. Thank you very much. Good night.
Thank you so much. Have a
Thank,
good night.
thank you so much. Thank you.